Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Can You Prove Your Security Actually Works? As organizations face more advanced threats, tighter resources, and growing pressures from leadership, security teams are being asked now more than ever to move beyond visibility and show measurable proof that their defenses are working. Today, we'll explore how continuous validation, AI-driven detection, automated response, and board-ready reporting can help enterprises strengthen resilience without adding unnecessary complexity. I'm excited to be joined by our speakers from Trigent, Seceon, CNA Insurance, Unite Here Health, who will be sharing practical insights on how to turn cybersecurity from reactive monitoring into continuous provable cyber assurance. My name is Shikha Pandey. I head product strategy and product marketing here at Seceon, and I'll be moderating our panel today. And I'm very honored to be joined by lead industry experts in this space on this call with me. And I'd like to invite our panelists now to take a second to introduce themselves real quick before we get started. So, Souvik, why don't we start with you and then we can go from there.
Sure.
Sure.
I'm
Go ahead,
currently
Souvik.
an AVP with CNA Insurance, which is a Fortune 500 PNC insurer based out of Chicago. Previous to that, I have experienced both within the corporate space and also client-facing roles. And Currently at CNA, I'm part of their IT compliance function. So we work very closely with our information security functions to make sure that our cyber controls and other IT controls are in place.
Yeah, Souvik, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Souvik Chanda. I work for Trigent Software Corporation. So I've been with Trigent for almost around 4 years. I manage the infrastructure as well as the cybersecurity tower. We do a lot of infrastructure work, migrations, cybersecurity, SOC services. Happy to be a part of this webinar. Thank you.
Okay. Wayne, and then we can do Suraj and then Tom.
Sure, I'll just do a quick intro. Hi, my name is Wayne Bullman. I'm the CIO and Security Officer for Unite Here Health. So Unite Here Health is a $1.7 billion labor management fund that really focuses on providing the highest health benefits to participants, unions, employers in the hospitality industry. So I've been here and blessed to do that for 11 years and glad to join today.
Thank you, Wayne. So I'll go next. My name is Suraj Havalad. I am the Associate Director of Business Development with Trigent Software Inc. I've been with Trigent for the last 10 years, based out in Chicago. Trigent Software is a leading custom software technology services provider. We closely work with product companies and enterprises across different portfolio of services. Happy to be on this panel and looking forward to this webinar. Thank you.
And last and definitely least, Tom Ertl here with the Seceon platform provider. I've been with Seceon for 8 years, been in networking, been in industry for over 40 years in designing computers, telecoms, networking, and now in cybersecurity.
Awesome team. We are very, very excited to have all of you on the call with us. Thank you for being here, and thank you to our audience for being here. I think we're ready to go ahead, and our first topic is GRC compliance improving effectiveness. So to begin, let's talk about a challenge I know many organizations are facing right now. Security teams have invested in tools, controls, processes, but leadership and auditors increasingly want proof that those investments are actually reducing risk. So how do you prove your security program is actually working, not just deployed, especially from a compliance and audit perspective? Souvik Ghosh, I think I would love to hear your perspective on this, and then perhaps we can go to Wayne.
Yeah, so from the context of the kind of hot topics in the IT compliance space, one of them definitely is AI. So there's a lot of focus on identity and access management for AI agents and how even the end users are using AI. So a lot of focus on that. Beyond that, in the traditional cybersecurity realm, I think the main focus has been incident reporting incidents. So the kind of the last end of the incident management process, kind of figuring out the various regulatory requirements and then ensuring that there is a proper re-reporting of the incidents when they needed to be reported. And then the third thing is, the broad observability and explainability of the AI tools, right? So, and I think that's where having a good SIEM tool kind of plays into that space, right? Because there's a lot of requirements from the regulatory perspective to explain not only that, as you kind of mentioned, that not only that those controls are in place, that those controls are working as intended, and there is evidence that you can prove to the regulators that those controls are in place.
Anything you'd like to add, Wayne?
No, I think just kind of backing that up, if you really look at it, the challenge all of us have as we start to talk to our boards or talking to the executive teams is they talk about security and it goes over their heads or they start blinking their eyes. They're like, "What are you talking about?" So I think it's really trying to look at it and transition that we have some tools in place and we're continually improving them, but how do we prove it works? So it's really around, I kind of focus it on what are our biggest risks? How are we protecting those? How do we really detect an issue if it happens quickly? And how can we contain it and show we didn't have any business impact? So there's a lot of kind of cool measurements your tools and things can do to help show that, as well as what are you doing with your core business program, your risk management program? And so there's a couple different ways to kind of slice and dice that, but you can clearly show we have this controls for us at CIS. We're putting in place with the structure behind the tools behind it, and then being able to tell, well, for us, the big regulatory controls are all around HIPAA primarily, and how are we protecting PH? I can show how I'm doing that in addition to general risk. So I try to keep it as high level as possible and frame it along those.
Makes sense, makes sense. And let me ask you a follow-up here then. Building on that, compliance is no longer just about, like you said, checking boxes once a year. Organizations need to show that, hey, security is continuously monitored, clearly documented, ready to stand up to the board or audit scrutiny at any moment. So in this case, what does audit ready or board ready security actually look like in practice for regulated environments?
Well, I can tell at least for ours, it's trying to break it down really simply, right? Because they really want to know what are the risks we have. um, how are you best protecting us against those by either if you have the risk an issue happens, you're doing it quickly, you're containing it and can prove there wasn't any business impact. And then if they want to type the deeper level, it's like, well, all right, what are you doing to help protect? So we could talk about all the different types of compliance things we're doing, our penetration testing, but most of them, they usually don't get to that. They really want to know what's the biggest risks you see? How are you protecting it? Give me your, or give, they ask me more directly, what's my take on that? How am I feeling? What's my comfort level? And I can talk then about the tools that we have, the layers of security we have, how we protect.
Makes sense. Solvik, any thoughts you want to add there or the rest of the Trigent team?
Yeah, just to add on that, right? So one of the recent requirements we had from our board is that we always had a pretty mature risk assessment function, but when we are looking at risk and associating controls to mitigate those risks, the control assessment has only been done at a maturity level, right? So, but the requirement has been now, okay, control maturity assessment is not enough. We have to show the effectiveness of those controls. So there is proving effectiveness controls is very cumbersome. So there is a lot of pushback from our IT process owners on the kind of the compliance burden. So we are looking more and more into automations and making sure that we can prove that control effectiveness, and then kind of move, and then kind of increase the maturity from just saying, okay, we think we have a good control in place versus proving out that we do have a good control in place.
Makes sense, makes sense. Trigent team or Tom, any other thoughts there?
I think when you had the question about that particular term called audit ready, so I think most of the organizations, what they target is, hey, audit is coming and let's just be ready for it, right? Let's just fill our gaps, let's just plug in our gaps, do quick fixes. I don't think that's the right way of doing it, right? So you do whatever you need to do to secure your organization, you will automatically be audit ready. Audit should only be a check for to understand if you have things in place properly and if you're doing the right thing. But it should not be the other way around, where I am doing things only for the audit.
Yes, yes, makes sense.
Could I just add to that really fast?
Absolutely.
I completely agree, and I think a lot of the focus is if people are scrambling and worrying about audit, you're missing the point that you don't have your framework set up correctly. Because if you're looking, you're putting your whatever your framework is, it should have, like if I'm using CIS, it has four components to it, right? So it's clearly showing I have these controls in place, but it means it's there's a policy, there's a documented process that's in place, it's automated, and the last part, it's auditable. So right away, you should say, if I have these controls, come to me, I can show you. Here it is. Here's the results. As opposed to, just like we were saying before, you're scrambling now because the auditors might ask something different. Put it to them in front of them. You're free to ask on any of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
one quick comment here. I
yeah, and
completely agree with.
while you're answering, we have a quick poll actually. So we'll go ahead and do this for our audience.
Sure,
Yeah, go
sure.
ahead, Tom.
Yeah, whenever I talk, you're probably going to hear me allude to the word platform, right? So the ability to have as many of those controls that you're talking about combined together so that when you do get to, the reporting, you get your insights into what's happening, it's all combined. It's not five different reports that I have to look across. It's okay, my platform has correlated all this data for me, so now I'm getting a very unified message, a very unified report.
Exactly. And I think this is a great shift into our next topic, visibility and operational challenges. I want us to shift from compliance to day-to-day operational reality. So even with the strongest sort of security programs in place, teams are often really stretched thin, managing too many alerts, too many tools, too many moving parts across their environments. SOC teams are overwhelmed. What are the biggest challenges your team is dealing with today in security operations, Trigent team, Soubhik and Suraj? I'd love to hear from you guys there.
Yeah, sure. So, from a business standpoint, what I've seen is, especially when I speak to a lot of technical leaders, organizations, they usually struggle with a lot of visibility across different hybrid environments. They're on cloud, they're on-prem, they're legacy systems, third-party tools, a lot of unmanaged endpoints. So the challenge is not always that data is missing, but the data is so fragmented. It's across in too many platforms. So the way we are sort of positioning that gap is, by integrating security, infrastructure, and application telemetry into more of a unified view. So meaning improving asset discovery. So using automation, AI-driven analytics to sort of surface those risks pretty faster. So the goal is to sort of give leaders like a actionable visibility and not just building more dashboards or alerts. So that's what we are seeing as part of the gap.
Makes sense. Soubhik, anything you want to add there?
Yeah,
Yep.
I think one of the big challenge for us has been, in the context of AI now. I think that visibility has become so important, and we are deploying both AI at the end user level, like Copilot and other AI tools like that, and we are also deploying AI at the IT level, like in a Cloud Code or tools like that. And in both of those instances, I think a big ask has been the whole area of visibility and explainability proof to our higher level management and even to our regulators that that we are monitoring the usage of those tools and making sure that nothing inappropriate is happening there.
Yeah, and I think this moves me to my next question, which is related. One of the recurring themes in security operations right now is that you cannot protect what you cannot see. So as environments are expanding across cloud, applications, endpoints, networks, operational systems, visibility is becoming harder to maintain and even harder to act on. So where do organizations most often struggle to get complete visibility across their environment? Soubhik Chanda, I would love to hear from you here.
Yeah. So if you are talking about visibility, if you are continuing to talking about visibility and operational challenges, um, I have kind of worked in a couple of organizations in my tenure, and what I see, and I also do talk to a lot of industry leaders. Now, most of the organizations kind of struggle to see everything that is happening across the length and breadth of their IT environment, because everything is like too spread out. In today's environment, systems are spread across cloud, on-premises, remote users, even mobile devices, and even third-party vendors, right? There are a lot of third-party vendors who use their own systems to support customers. Now, because of this, there is no single unified view. Uh, Teams who are decision making, who are supposed to take decisions, they kind of work on partial visibility. They make decisions with incomplete information, and then they struggle to, do break fixes, or they end up taking a wrong decision and all those things, right? Now, another issue is, there are so many different security and IT tools in place, and most of these tools work in silos. So there's one tool which is collecting endpoint data, one tool network data.
Right.
There are n number of tools, and they all collect data and their own data, but they do not connect with each other, right? This makes it extremely difficult for us to connect the dots when an incident happens. So once an incident happens, we do not know where you know, I wouldn't say that we would never know, but then it definitely takes a lot of time before we can figure out where it originated, where where it traveled, and what is the current scenario. So uh, this is one of the reasons why a lot of threats go unnoticed for a longer time than where we were expected to catch it, right?
Yeah.
Now, you can talk about shadow IT, you can talk about third-party access. These things make things more complicated. Now, privileged access. People may use applications that are not tracked. They might use certain amount of privileged access, external access, which is not monitored, right? So, in simple terms, I don't think it's a problem that we do not have enough tools. It is that the problem is that we do not have one connected real-time view of the entire environment.
Right. Right. Suraj and Tom, any final thoughts here before we move on?
I mean, by the way, this is Clifford, and I'm pretty new at Trigent. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to second what Souvik and Suraj and Souvik had said, because I am pretty new at the sales team at Trigent here, and luckily or unfortunately, I've been selling cybersecurity for a while. And what I see that a lot of customers in today's real world scenario face an issue is they feel that if they have too much of IT stack, or too much of solutions, that solves the problem, right? And coming out to Sovik's point that, a lot of, I'd say, vulnerability scores or pen testing solutions or automated pen testing solutions are there. But, and in my, I'd say, 4 years of selling cybersecurity, one of the things that I've seen, I'd say 70% of customers really struggle with. It's not about how many vulnerabilities do we have. We could have 900,000 vulnerabilities, and we could have CVE or CVSS scores out there. But what do they need to really fix from an industry standpoint? So something that's very relevant to, let's say, a healthcare organization, which could be HIPAA, could be XYZ, may differ from, let's say, a BFSI industry, right? So I was kind of, looking into something known as, from a Deloitte CTEM framework, that actually really tells organizations what is that you really need to fix. You may have 10 vulnerabilities, but two of them could actually really matter. So yeah, I think what Soubik just said, I kind of relate with that, and I feel that that's one area where organizations today are a little hesitant to change, but they also feel that just a checkbox for some of them. Let's say a very mid-sized organization is needed for an audit purpose, but for an ongoing journey from a cybersecurity landscape, you probably need something to really kind of be that tied in. So yeah, Souvik, you raised a pretty good point in that I kind of second that. So yeah, just want to call that out.
Thank you. And I think this is a great comment moving us into our next question. A major pressure point for mid-market organizations is the need to improve security outcomes without simply adding more tools, more dashboards, as you mentioned, more cost. The real opportunity is finding ways to do more with the resources teams already have. So I think I'd love to ask, how can organizations improve detection and response without adding more tools, without adding more cost? Um, uh, Suraj, Wayne, Tom, I'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, I'll chime in here. So I think we have to look a little bit in the past to figure out how we got here, right? I mean, people didn't just say, "Oh, I want to go buy 10 different tools and create these silos and the lack of the correlation across them." If we look back in time, PCs came out in the mid 80s. This thing called antivirus came out around that time to protect those PCs, okay? Then, as more and more PCs got proliferated in offices and buildings, a firewall evolved to help protect the data coming into them. The next step was sort of SIMs, right? So the Splunks and the QRadars came out in the early 2000s to help collect a bunch of data from those. So these tools have continued to been instituted as they were needed, right? So then you had EDRs come into play, in the 2010s, and then later came NDR. So people have just continued to add tools over time. Okay, there wasn't this thing called a platform that could that correlated all that data. Well, that does exist now, right? So the for me, the ideally for people, what they can do is they can start to cut back on a lot of the different stovepipers, tools that they have, and go with something that's going to collect all that data into a single platform, do the correlation for them, do the alert detection, and cut down, using AI, not just agentic AI, but real AI that actually looks in and tries to look at things as an analyst would, and then take actions for them. So cutting back on the resources needed, cutting back on the time to detection. So just my thoughts on the subject.
Awesome. Suraj or Wayne, anything you guys want to add here?
I'm pretty much good. Wayne, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just add real quickly to supplement what Tom had said and maybe just summarize it. It's really, your focus when you're doing this is really how do you get more out of what you already have, right? So, there's a good look at the tools and how you simplify the tools and do that, but you're really looking to how do you reduce noise for your team, prioritizing the most meaningful alerts you can get. How do you tune continuously based on real incidents that come up? So you train your teams and then practice. So, the whole goal would be you're trying to get use your tools as best as possible to say you can detect faster, you can respond faster, and your teams are less fatigued.
Yeah, and I think go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, and you also have a unified report then, right? So instead of having, again, 5 different reports from 5 different tools, you've got one unified report that pull all that data together.
Makes sense. Thank you for those insights. Okay, second to last question. I'd love to bring this back to practical action. For our leaders listening today, the goal is not just to, of course, understand the problem, but to walk away with clear next steps they can begin applying immediately. So, what are those 2 to 3 practical steps leaders can take immediately to strengthen cyber resilience? And what does board-ready cyber resilience look like in practice? Open to all of our guest panelists and our panelists from the Trigent and the Seceon team.
I'll jump in on one just as a couple practical things and I know there's more to add, but if you're looking at what are your highest risks, right? So I think that's what the board's going to be more focused on. They love and they don't, but they tune out when they start hearing about all the tools. What are your really highest risks? How are you? And then you can go through and simplify. What are you doing to mitigate those and put it in terms of business outcomes, not tech things that you're doing? And then I would show or walk through with your teams one practical exercise to do that. See how your team really performs.
Right, right. Awesome. Any other thoughts any of our panelists would like to add on practical steps?
Yeah, I'd like to echo with what Wayne just said. The board doesn't really care about some of the details. I think they always view it from a risk perspective, right? So if we can articulate all of the data points that our tools are providing, if we can summarize that, and if we can correlate that to business impact. So how does that issue, incident, vulnerability, whatever the case may be, how is it impacting the business, and what is the risk there? So that that kind of triaging that and making sure we can kind of present that to the board is a very hard task, right? So I think that taking the tools, taking the risk informations and other asset information, kind of putting it together and then reporting to the board is what you are all aiming for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree to that, because making the leadership understand, the board members understand the risk versus the value of what you're trying to do is extremely important, because although we are technical people, not everybody in the board might be technically inclined. An example of a CFO, he might be good in finance, but wouldn't understand risks and the value of the cybersecurity work or cybersecurity implementations which you would do, right? He might just look at it from a money perspective. So it is extremely important that we connect the right dots. We put it in layman's term. Hey, this is the risk. This is what the impact might be to the organization. They understand impact to the organization. They might not necessarily understand the technical terms.
Right.
That's very important.
Absolutely. All right. I'm now hitting our final question. We've covered a lot today, from proving effectiveness and improving visibility to using automation and how to report and drive stronger outcomes. So to close, I would say, bring this all together around execution and how organizations can operationalize these ideas in a very realistic, scalable way. Based on everything we've discussed, how should organizations think about operationalizing these improvements? And how are organizations scaling security without increasing complexity, without increasing headcount? What's the best way to do that? Tom, I'd love for you to start, and then perhaps we can go to the other panelists.
Sure, and I think I've alluded to a lot of this with, ideally going to some sort of platform, and it's going to have AI, and everybody's talking about AI, so that's the hottest topic in the world right now. But using artificial intelligence to help you do things more autonomously, right, more efficiently, so again, migrating to more of a platform solution where you're getting everything done in a single place with some of that autonomous action being taken. And back to the points the folks were just making here, reporting, for the board, for the shareholders, reporting is the most important thing, right? Because you're right, all this technical mumbo jumbo doesn't mean much to them, but showing them very concise, very detailed, not detailed as much, but reports summarizing, okay, what is it that we're dealing with? What are the challenges, and what actions have been taken, so that they can assess, okay, are we in good shape? Or, is our board level, response in good shape? So sorry, that's a little bit of rambling there, but.
Any of our other panelists would like to add anything?
Yeah, I think it's initially the visibility to really understand what you already have, like in terms of, like, you have so many logs, you have so many tools, what's the coverage, and then really look at, we talked about tools. So what use cases, what are you prioritizing in terms of your use case, in terms of ransomware, identity compromising? So then really look at how can you standardize some of these things? What can you automate these workflows? And then what is your continuous improvement? I think that's the way organizations need to look at standardizing some of these practices today and building their improvements.
Absolutely. Before we close, I saw we actually had an audience question from Jensen. So I was wondering if you want to take that on. How do you balance regulatory compliance requirements with dynamic, evolving cyber threats? Souvik Ghosh, I think maybe this one is for you.
Sure. Yeah, and the way I look at it is, a lot of the regulations, come as a response to evolving threats, right? So the threat landscape always evolve first, and the regulations catch up, right? So I think, and then the balance, there is always a balancing act, because the pendulum sometimes swing. Right now, it's very, for a large organizations right now, it's extremely difficult to meet, for example, the incident reporting requirements, because each regulatory framework has a different definition of what incidents need to be reported, right? So So the challenge is that without a tool, again, AI, maybe AI will help, right? So we have incident reporting systems that is capturing the incidents. Maybe we need an AI tool now to then triage and then tell us, which incidents need to be reported, needs to be reported to which regulatory body.
Right.
So yeah, but I think the tool kind of plays the bridge, right? So there are risks that come up, tool kind of catch up with that, try to mitigate or prevent those risks, and then eventually the regulators catch up and then they ask reporting against those risks.
Absolutely. I'd like to give an opportunity for any of our other panelists to add any final thoughts before we close. Okay, so I think we are at time. I want to take a second to say thank you to all of our speakers for sharing such valuable insights, and thank you to everyone who joined us today for this very important conversation on proving security effectiveness, building board-ready cyber resilience. We hope you leave with practical ideas for strengthening visibility, automating response, validating controls, and really turning cybersecurity into measurable business assessment and excellence. Thank you so much, everyone, and feel free to reach out to our team for any questions you may have.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.